Want to plan your next fishing trip without the hassle? FishingBooker.com is the best way to find and book a fishing charter anywhere in the world. Whether you're chasing trophy fish or just looking for a family day on the water, Fishing Booker makes it simple, fast, and secure. With thousands of experienced guides, verified reviews, and 24/7 customer support, Fishing Booker takes the guesswork out of planning. Visit FishingBooker.com and book your trip today. Fishing Booker. Fishing trips made easy.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about people who disappeared, how you might go off grid or go off the surveillance grid and just completely disappear, right? Like a boss, right? That's the trick. So I got a lot of cool guys. There's guys who, you know, none of them are the most desirable characters in life. You don't look to them as maybe role models because who else has to go on the run but kind of thieves and criminals and shady guys. But there are some people who came up with some pretty good ideas, you know, and that's basically something we want to dive into, kind of some of the techniques that they employed and the things like that. Your kind of thing, you know, you have ideas, people we should have been talking about, like, subscribe, you know, comments, let us know, right? But let's just kind of jump right into it. So one of the, you know, I think everybody, DB Cooper comes in to mind with all of them, but I actually wanted to start, how about Saddam Hussein?
Yeah, he disappeared for a while, man. They were looking for his ass for a long time.
So he evaded capture for 8 months. This is back 2003. You know, basically we had decided that he was, you know, if we attacked Iraq, somehow that would fix the whole 9/11 terror thing. I'm not really sure how, and then we were like, no, wait, it's weapons of mass destruction. That's what it is. But we didn't find those there
that
either.
Wasn't there either.
But I'm assuming that's because he secretly smuggled them out to Syria. I'm going to go with that. That's what I tell myself in my heart. That we really just wrong on that one. Because, dude, everybody was on TV going, yeah, this is what happened. Like Hillary, Bush, everybody.
Everybody was on.
Powell, Condoleezza Rice, they were all like, yep, weapons mass destruction. That's what it is. John Kerry, I think, was even out there with it. They were all on board, you know? Mm-hmm. So we decided we were going to go get Saddam. I think actually there's a story that, you know, we used to hear in the military. I don't know how true, you know, but it was in our circles, was that they basically gave some CIA guys a briefcase with $10 million in it. And said, yeah, go get Saddam's head and bring it back. And that was kind of the initial. We thought it was going to be like a 2-day thing. Right. We'd go get that guy. And it didn't work out as they thought. So there's a lot of things that led to his success of 8 months, right? Dude, 8 months when there's like a $25 million bounty on your head and the entire U.S. Army is searching for you as their only number one priority. I got to say, that's 8 months ain't bad for that one.
Yeah, in a country that's like the size of Montana, you know, it's not.
You don't have a lot of room and to hide. So that's, yeah. So basically, you're talking about a guy who lived in like all these fancy palaces, gold toilets, you know, the whole deal. He had it, you know, he was a baller, right? He went from baller to like living in a dirt hole. And by that, I mean, literally a dirt hole. It was rough that, where they found him. It was like a little, they said 6 foot deep hole. And basically it had a little like ventilation fan and a bunch of candy bars like that and some canned food were down in the hole. Like that's this guy, right? So how did he do it? Right. That's what you're all kind of dying to know and what it comes down to. How did he pull that off? So one of his big things was he had a loyalty network. At first we thought we'd get him by kind of tracking down his family. And that's why it was so hard, was because everybody in power was related to him, right? Mm-hmm. That was like all the leaders were his thing. But the thing is, if they turned on him, they couldn't really rise in power because the reason they had status was because of him.
Right.
Do you follow that? Like, it's not like, it wasn't like, oh, it's obvious. Well, he was the glue that held it all together. So if they turn on Saddam, then there's nothing left. So that was a big part of it. The next is by going low tech, right? That was how he did it. So he actually, master of disguise, right? This guy grew a beard. That's obviously the secret go-to.
That's the secret, right?
Even you get a beard. If you have a beard, you shave it off and you're like a new person.
Different guy, completely different.
They don't know what to think, right? So Saddam grew the shaggy beard. He started dressing like a peasant. He went all hardcore. Now, so one of the things, I said is a loyalty network. So what he did is actually he cashed in on his bodyguards because they were people who weren't related to him. And that's how he kind of snuck out and went away, was his close bodyguards. He used their network to go. Now, how they actually found him is kind of a crazy story. So what they did is, so basically he ended up hiding like right in the middle of everything, right where everybody was and where they were looking for him. And they just, because he was living the unexpected life of like a peasant farmer, that's how he was able kind of to pull it off. So what he did was, it was actually a master sergeant who kind of came up with the plan. And he's like, I bet you he used his bodyguards. And he kind of came up with that. And he was like, look, let's go check them out. And he tracked it down to a cousin of one of his bodyguards. And he said, and they went and they interrogated him and they were like, what do you know about, Saddam? Where would they go? Whatever. Well, one interview, he heard Saddam liked fishing. All right. And then he went and talked to the cousin, and the cousin's like, well, I know my uncle used to like fishing at this lake somewhere. And so just putting that together and like running down every lead, he's like, whatever. So they go back to the uncle's community and they find this little like shack, just nothing, kind of sitting there. And they're like, hey, we think Saddam might be here. And they're like, oh, Saddam. Now the guy doesn't want to be the one to betray Saddam. Mm-hmm. Because you're like, I don't want to be that guy, right? That's awkward. Right. But there's a rope on the ground, and the guy just kind of keeps kicking it and like looking down at it. But I think like it was intentional, but he didn't like, he's like, I want you to figure it out because I want all this to end, but I don't want to be the guy to betray him. And so he keeps kicking this rope, and they're just not getting the hint. The soldier, like, it's like 5 minutes. And he's like, getting ridiculous, kicking the rope. And then finally they're like, wait, if we follow that rope, where's that going to go? And they go and they pull it. And sure enough, it goes over to the hole that Saddam's in. And instead of coming out like in a blaze of glory, he's like, whoa, don't want to die. It's Saddam. But it was like right next to a little house and whatever. But they found him. He had a bunch of like Mars bars, and he had $750,000 in cash. U.S. cash.
U.S. cash,
Because he was going to, and it was all like, small bills kind of thing. Like they said it was like 26 pounds or something. And he was going to, pay off anybody. So one, keeping it low tech, right? Not a big trail of, running around with the credit cards, running around with everything, keeping it on disguise, that's the kind of thing that sets you apart. That's what helps. It's the, the low, easy, spider hole, whatever. And I don't imagine he was in the spider hole the whole time. I think it was whenever troops are moving in, my guess. I don't know. Maybe the guy's like a real hardcore, maybe just every day in there. I feel like that's got to suck, but maybe that's what you got to do to, stay alive. But nothing wrong with a dirt hole. It makes it hard to find, especially if you're 6 feet down. Even though thermal image, that's still going to be tough.
I get you.
I don't know. Kevin, what do you think? You got some guys that are pretty exciting. Who impressed you?
Yeah, so I was looking into this a little bit, and I found this guy named Larry Chisholm.
Okay.
Also known as Kenneth Brookins, Jack Kaufman, and Gary Baume. He was a Vietnam vet, right? Got out of the war and started going to college. He was just about to graduate with a law degree. And he got arrested because apparently the whole time he'd been going to college, he was running this heroin smuggling ring where him and some of the other guys from the college were smuggling heroin in from Mexico and selling it. So they arrested him and gave him a 40-year sentence. And he was like super well behaved. You know what I mean? Like really doing a good deal, doing the good thing. They thought he was like working towards like an early release type deal.
All right.
But they took him on a bowling trip that was near the prison, in a bowling alley that was near the prison. And him and another guy, one of the prison guards noticed that he was like being kind of suspicious and going into the bathroom. So he followed him into the bathroom. When he opened the door, he was looking down the barrel of a sawed-off shotgun. There are 2 sawed-off shotguns that had been hidden in the bathroom earlier in the day by one of his buddies.
Nice.
So the cop ran back out. He was lucky because he hadn't loaded the shotgun yet.
Smart.
So he ran back out and started shooting. And Larry had loaded the shotgun up, and they had a big shootout. He shot one of the officers 2 times, hit him in the chest, but he had a bulletproof vest on, and he hit him in the shoulder. And one of the officers shot it. Well, they didn't shoot his thumb off. It was kind of hanging on, and he was able to keep it on. But he made his escape and took off. What he did was he kidnapped one of the people that worked at the bowling alley, and they carjacked another person's car and drove to the airport.
Nice. They
got rid of they let the hostage go, and they took the owner of the airport. What was his name? Dickens Municipal Airport. They took the owner of the airport. They got on a plane and flew to Arkansas.
Now, let me stop you though. So when you said he snatched the car and stole it, one of the tricks I always heard when I was a little kid is, one, you want to steal like a common car, right?
Right.
Like, at the time it was always like the Ford Taurus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, it moved on to like the Honda Accord, you always
Honda Accord is the big one. Yeah.
So what are, everybody got out there, maybe it's Camry now, or actually I think everybody has a freaking Kia now is the way the world's heading. But anyway,
I don't know what it is anymore.
Right. So you pick a common car, a common color, then the trick is after you steal it, you want to swap the license plate, preferably to another car that can, because you're in the mall parking lot or, somewhere where there's a lot of cars to choose from. If you swap the license plate, well, they're looking for the license plate of that stolen car. Mm-hmm. They come up to you and they're like, oh, that's a Kia. No, that license plate doesn't match. That's not our guy. Right. Or when you see the Amber Alert, right? It's like, oh, this license plate. That's what
you want to swap the license plate. You want to give them your old license plate so that they don't you might not even notice going out and getting in your car that your license plate is a different number.
So that usually buys you a day or two, right? Extra of, people noticing things. And by that, like, you shouldn't be driving the stolen car more than like 2 days or whatever. Like, you need to get where you're getting and whatever. Just wanted to pass that little secret of the pros along. There's no reason. I'm just saying, like, if you were being hunted by a foreign government and you were working for the U.S. government doing good things for freedom, then these tactics might come into play.
Yeah, this isn't for like the use of criminals.
Right. No.
Don't commit crimes.
We would never do that. I'm just saying, like, if something went rogue, when you've seen those movies where the good guy is trying to expose the corrupt government that we know they did something. And if it works out right, you're a hero. But if it goes down wrong, you're, back in the, then you suicide yourself or something,
Right.
So,
right.
I'm just saying it was, if you're the good guy in the scenario, these are things you would do. So anyway, sorry, go back on. He's going to the airport.
So yeah, they flew out to Arkansas and, ended up getting caught again 3 days later. But he convinced one of the guys he was in jail with to try and crawl through the air vent, and he got out, overpowered the guard, unlocked him, and they were on the run again.
Nice.
So a couple of months later, he walked into First National Bank in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was a bank inspector. At least that's what he told them. And then when he got in the bank, in the back, he opened up his bag and then had a bomb. So he took the bomb out, filled the bag up with $200,000, walked out, and he just kind of disappeared into the crowd. Like, he was just, disappeared into the bystanders. The police were there. He saw him. And
that's the thing.
Away.
You always see the movies where the guys sneak out. He's like in the EMT outfit, or he's wearing the fireman coat and the helmet.
Well, the thing that really helps this guy, he was just an average white guy, average height, brown hair, brown eyes,
probably had a beard.
Average. He looked exactly like everybody else. So a couple years later, they tracked him down to New Orleans. And but when they got there, he had just left. He had left all his stuff behind.
So close.
Yeah. And they found all these books on how to make fake IDs, how to fake your death, how to change your identity. He had laminating machines. He had all this equipment to
Ragnar
make
Benson
IDs.
has a lot of books on that. I'm just saying. And you think they're outdated, but some of those tricks still kind of connect. I think if you follow the inspiration and the ideas, they ring true. That's what I would say. Go on.
So that was basically it. That was the last time they saw him. He apparently is married. He was going under Kenneth Brookins, the name. Had a wife named Brookins, had 3 kids, and nobody's seen him in about 30 years.
They didn't think to look in the phone book?
Well, I mean, I'm sure he's got a different name now, but he's still on the U.S. Marshals 15 Most Wanted. So if you see him out there, let him know.
You're like, Ken, is that you? And,
there's a $25,000 reward for him, but they never pay that reward.
Yeah, that's the thing. 15,000. That was it, dude. So that was back to Saddam, right? They were like, well, they thought about not paying the reward because they were like, and they were like, well, we really should, because then that'll give us more credibility and I'm like, really? You can't.
That's it.
And you can't even put it out publicly like that. Yeah, we didn't think we were going to do that because fuck them.
Remember they had a $25 million reward on Osama bin Laden, and they never paid that. I mean, in fact, the guy that turned him in got arrested and went to prison. So
jokes on you, because you don't really complain about it when you're in that,
right, in that Pakistani prison. That would be the best place to be staying.
Right, you're like, send out a note. They owe me $25 million.
Yeah. Remember Luigi Mangione? They had a big reward for him. Okay. They never paid that.
They never pay shit, dude.
They never pay those rewards. Don't turn people in for the reward money, because you ain't going to get it.
You ain't going to get it. And odds are you might get arrested. You know what? If you were that close that Saddam, you're probably part of the problem.
Yeah.
I think we got a file on you somewhere. I think that's how that goes.
We can come up with something.
We'd come up with something. Mm-hmm. Now, there's another guy who kind of went the exact opposite way then as far as the low tech and the whole thing. Let's talk Edward Snowden. This is back to 2013. NSA contractor leaks classified documents, but he's not doing it for his own gain. I feel like his intent was solid, right? He really was trying to. Now we can argue whether that was the best way to go about it. I think one of the big things is maybe it wasn't one of the best ways because it turned out nobody cared. Nobody cared that their privacy is stolen and that the government's corrupt, because everyone's like, oh, we already knew the government's corrupt and we're down for that.
Yeah, and now they just keep doing exactly what they're doing, except we know they're doing it.
Nothing changed.
And nobody actually gave a shit. Even though people in Congress, to Congress, directly lied and said it wasn't happening, and then it was proven they were liars, and still nothing happened to them.
Right, and then the only person they wanted to put in jail was Snowden.
Right.
They're like, oh, all these lies were exposed, like the director of the FBI, things like that, right? And then they're like, whatever. So how did he do it, right? So one, you watch that movie and he had that slick little nickel with the drive in it. Did you see that?
Mm-mm.
He had, one of those little hide the little micro USB drive in a fake nickel or whatever and throws it in his pocket and sneaks out. I don't know about all that. That could have just been the movie, but I do have some actual information of how he got out of there. So one, he kept like a low profile is one of his things. Like his first go-to baller move is he goes to Hong Kong to even do this, right? So he goes to Hong Kong because they have legal protections. And one, it's a physical distance from the U.S., but it's also a jurisdictional distance from the U.S. And then obviously he ended up in Russia for the non-extradition whole thing going. But he planned his route that he would not go through any U.S. allies, right? Like as he, went to airport.
Mm-hmm.
He kept like the low physical profile. In Hong Kong, he had one hotel room, never went out, used cash to avoid like credit card tracking, that kind of stuff. Relied on his lawyers and like other WikiLeaks kind of people. This girl, Sarah Harrison, to negotiate his transit. Like they were basically setting it up. So it wasn't him booking all the things. So that's like a big, bonus. So we knew the NSA could track him globally, right? Because, this is what he did. He tracked things and tracked people. He, remained calm, did his whole thing, and just like laid low while preparing for the long-term game. And I think that was the thing is he planned out a long-term game. And, he's one guy with a laptop. And, dude, this guy was like hardcore secrecy. So, like, when he's typing on his laptop, he's not hooking to any networks. He's, when he does connect, it's, through Tor. He's using all the, the secret, VPNs and that kind of stuff where you're swapping about, right? So that's, that's a big thing. The virtual network, but that's where Tor's beauty is. It's many virtual networks. I do kind of wonder how secure Tor is because it was actually created by the government, it was meant so that government agents could be secret and do things in their investigations. But in order for them to use it, they had to open it up because if you were like, oh, anybody on here is a government agent, kind of that kind of backfires on you.
Defeats the purpose of it.
But he also he avoided ATMs, right? Because they all have the cameras and the pings and the whole thing like that. But he would also physically disable cameras. He would put tape over cameras. He would, unscrew cameras from the power source. That kind of stuff. That's where you outsmart stuff. But he actually kind of pulled it off. It depends. Not everybody sees him as a hero. Some people see him as a traitor. And I understand both arguments, right? both make sense. But, it's one of those things, right? So, it's something that I feel, I have strong principles, and I can understand being passionate about something and wanting, people to know the truth. And
right.
I think in his mind, he felt like if people knew that they would, be offended and take action. And
which apparently everybody's apathetic and nobody gives a shit.
That's the one.
I felt like I was the only one. I feel like, though, if you're patriotic and you love your country and you, who's your loyal to? Is it to the U.S. government or is it to the people of the United States? And
that's it. I mean, is it people? What comes first? Is it country, or is it or is it the people and the American way of life? Is it freedom? Right. I mean, I know, people are like, oh, the flag, the country, it's whatever, but it's because it stands for freedom that people get behind it and are passionate. And if you take away that freedom, does that loyalty kind of go away? That's what I always worry about. We all get so passionate about what we think is wrong or what we want to do, or, people are passionate, but make sure you understand your core values and your principles and what you believe. That's all I can say. Doesn't mean Snowden was right. Doesn't mean he did it the absolute best way. Doesn't mean that was the right thing. But sometimes there's a lot of gray, right? There's a lot of, are you not a patriot if you don't tell people what's going on when it's violating U.S. laws and, public U.S. laws, if that makes any sense? It's kind of a weird, gray, ugly, people were lying before Congress. He was exposing that. And people are like, well, if you'd done it by the right channels. Well, I get that. But if he had done it by the right channels, would he have
be in prison,
been silenced? And yeah, exactly. That doesn't, but the truth would have never came out, and he still would have lost his job, and he still would have. So it's kind of an ugly thing. Now, I don't know if Putin's taking care of him over there, got him a good job, or what happened. I don't know what goes on there exactly, but I do know that minimal footprint is your key. And, working with outsiders is a good takeaway of people helping you to plan. Now, obviously, these are people who can betray you, so you need to take that into account. But again, that's where, Saddam had his loyal, right-hand security guys. Now, I'm assuming, even though he was the brutal, ugly, mean dictator, Saddam, that he probably treated his security guys good, because if he didn't, I can't imagine how they were that loyal to him, and that, that he was able to get away as long as he did. Now, I also know that having fat stacks of cash also had something to do with it.
Also a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you break in your security force, you break into the room while they're sleeping and put a gun to their head and ask them, are you loyal or not? We're going to overthrow the government. Are you with us? And they say yes, and you shoot them. Usually kind of weeds out anyone that isn't 100%, for you to the death.
There you go. That's the trick. That's how you get to know. Now, I think we have time for one more. You got anybody you want to hit, or should we go to my list?
Well, let's talk about, let's go ahead.
No, I'm open. What do you got?
All right, let's talk about Eric Rudolph.
All right. Yeah. So he's the guy, the Atlanta bombing, right?
Yeah. The Olympic,
Olympic bomber. All right. He was hardcore. So, all right, now, let's jump into it.
He grew up in a family of survivalist preppers that, lived off the land, and, his mother was a big influence, super religious and super anti-government. I wouldn't know anything about having a mother like that, but it was he was super upset with how awful society had become.
Okay.
And he thought the biggest problems were the gays and the abortion doctors. Right. So he was bombing all sorts of shit. He was just blowing shit up left and right. And they didn't initially know who he was.
Okay.
Right. But they did figure it out. After the Olympic Park bombing.
Okay.
Hang on,
though.
Did track it down, but he wasn't. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Now, first, I don't know how you make the mental leap from people are killing people, innocent life, so I should kill them. I feel like that's kind of a hard leap to get to in your mental process.
Mm-hmm.
And two, do we have insight to why the Olympic bombing, like why he thought that was a good play?
Yeah. Globalism.
Okay.
Globalism. He was anti-globalist, and he believed that was like the Olympics like brought all different countries together.
Okay.
And that was a bad thing. That's why he set that bomb off there. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but in his mind, that made a lot of sense. It was a big bomb too. It was like a 16, 18 pound pipe bomb. And the backpack was like, he had a backpack and was like full of nails and like nuts and bolts and shit. And he just stuck it under a park bench with a timer. And luckily somebody spotted it, Richard Jewell, and they were able to get most of the people out of the way. And then they blamed the security guard that found the bag for planting it there.
Smart.
So he was
that's
able
how
to
we do it.
Yeah, Eric Rudolph was able to make his escape easily because nobody was looking for him for a few weeks after that.
Right.
So then he blew up another abortion clinic, I think he killed a police officer and wounded a nurse in that one. And but they saw him leaving. Like they kind of figured out who he was. And they tracked him down to the Appalachian Mountains and deployed something like 600 FBI agents into the mountains along with like local law enforcement, and never found him. Just kind of disappeared into the woods. Now there's like a lot of speculation that he had like gone into like some underground network.
Now wait, wasn't there stories of him like dumpster diving and people running into him?
But first they thought that maybe he had gone into like an underground network and somebody had killed him because he was bringing like, unneeded heat down on these right wing like groups.
Right.
But then about 4 years later, they did find him. He was dumpster diving. Police came by him and like thought it was suspicious. Now, it's legal to dumpster dive, but he still arrested this guy, whoever he was. He went by a different name. He told him he was like Paul, something or other.
Paul. Yeah, I mean, Paul.
But he still arrested him, and they ran his fingerprints, and turned out
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Yep.
We know who you are.
So he had basically lived in the woods, lived off the land, just eating edible plants. One of the things that he did was he would go like sneak into people's yards at night and raid their gardens and just eat up their vegetables and stuff. But he basically lived with, outside of society for years after this. And, eventually tracked him down because he made a mistake.
Nice.
But that was really a low tech,
exactly,
living a completely off the grid type of lifestyle that he lived. And that's the only reason he managed to stay on the lam so long. Yeah.
Now that's the beauty is I feel like low tech is the key, but also patience. One, I don't know. I can kind of zip through this one. I actually had a couple more. I didn't know, how quick they would go. But another one was Frank Morris, who was one of the guys who escaped Alcatraz. It was Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. And this is way back 1962. Now, Alcatraz was considered to be like the inescapable prison, right? So it was, not really going to happen. And I'm just kind of going to zip through this because it does fascinate me. One, these guys, like they were hardcore. So they wait for the opportune time. They climb up through the ventilation, which I feel like is not a fun, easy, you're usually like sweating your ass off. You're thinking, oh, it's blowing air conditioning on me. No, that's not usually the case, right? You're just, these are usually like return lines and stuff like that you're in. And it just immediately the temperature goes up and you start cooking in these things.
Yeah. And I feel like in any movie I've seen somebody crawl through an air duct, they're always crawling through the cleanest air duct I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? There's like a half inch of like dirt and dust, just like
dirt, dust, Legionnaire's disease, the whole thing, right? You got all kinds of bad going in there. Now, these guys actually set up like dummy heads in their beds to look like they were still sleeping. Mm-hmm. They climbed up the ventilation, managed to get all the way up to the roof of this building, then descend down to, climb down to the ground. They get in a raft that they had constructed, 50-degree waters, 1.5 mile an hour currents, is dark. It just was a mess, right? It was something, because you're thinking, 50 degrees, that's not that bad, but it is. You don't want to be in the cold water when you're out there soaking
50-degree water is cold water.
Yeah. No, now one of the theories is that they headed down to Brazil because there was like some photos showed up in 1979 of the Anglins, the brothers. Mm-hmm. They were like fueling, vehicles or something, and just down in, and they showed up. So who knows? But they made the raft out of life vests and raincoats and just kind of bundled it together and used contact cement, which I just really don't see that working.
Right.
But apparently it worked out.
Maybe that raft just sank and they got eaten by sharks.
And that's the beauty too, right? Like you don't even know.
Right.
I mean, we're talking maximum security prison, and these guys just, pulled it together. I don't know. It's amazing when people pull it off, but I think the keys, like a little summary of the whole thing, is patience and planning, putting thought into things and not just running around reckless. It's when you make quick decisions, like, they say you want to be decisive, and decisive once the plan is in action. I'm with you 100%. But I think thinking it through and planning something out when you're going to do something, I don't know. It just might pay off a little bit more. And that's why, we always push, it's like, hey, listen to, the podcast, because we have all kinds of good ideas and little things that, hey, I remember one time this guy did this. It's why we kind of talk of the off the wall, different, unique scenarios. Because when you see how other people played things out, you can kind of start to apply those things into your life. And also, it's just the idea of thinking outside the box, right? That, makes it a little bit more, helps you get there. So something to think about. You guys have other, great escape stories. Put them in the comments so we know about, some cool tricks or neat ideas that people did. We always appreciate that. Thoughts, concerns, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Check out the website, survivalandbasicbadasspodcast.com. We have a link for an email list. We have some cool badass gear. You can get things like our cool Survival and Basic Badass coffee mugs, things like that. Anyway, just think about it. And otherwise, I would say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.